Welcome to The Bitch in My Brain, the personal growth podcast where we address negative self-talk, build confidence, own our self-worth, and have a good-ass time doing it. Hosted by me, Josie Woods, life coach, entrepreneur, and light chaser. Get ready to embrace self-love and start living in your light. Now let's get after it. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitch in My Brain podcast. My name is Josie. It is a pleasure to be with you. I am very excited to be back in my routine recording the podcast. I have spent the last few months just kind of organizing other areas in my life. As you guys know, I started up my marketing business again, as well as, some other areas that I really wanted to clean up, that I was being called to clean up. And now I'm excited to be able to sit down in, a really good space and be able to record the podcast. So something that kind of came to mind as far as what I wanted to speak about was throughout these last few months that I've been cleaning stuff up, I have really fallen off my spiritual practices. I have not been going to yoga as much. I have, not been coming in here and meditating in, the same way that I used to. And when I first started feeling these feelings about not being consistent in my spiritual practice, I was feeling a little bit of guilt, and I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing these things, so I'm not making spiritual progress. And so it's been something that has been, on my mind, because as many of you know, spirituality is like a pillar in my life. It's something I lean on, pretty deeply. And so, it's been kind of this voice in the back of my head and it's really coming from like a place of fear of, if I fall off these, practices, what am I going to have? What's going to happen? Is my life going to go crazy? Am I going to die? Like that, those are the thoughts that were going through my head. And so I brought it up to my coach, Luz. And, we talked about the different areas in my life and what I've been feeling. And something that was really transformational for me was when she mentioned the idea that, growth and these aha moments and discovering, things about yourself on a deeper level don't always come from those really spiritual practices. They don't always come, through meditation or through yoga practices. And that was a belief that I had and held really tightly. And so what we realized is, I've been kind of pushed out of my comfort zone or my foundation to really learn this kind of new lesson or new thought process. And what kind of came forward was, it's in the small moments, it's in the moments that you least expect it, that we make change in our life, that we have these, downloads from the universe that bring these certain beliefs or ideas to light. And that really kind of shook my world up, because when bad things happen or less than ideal things happen, I'm like, oh my gosh, the world's ending. I mean, it's not always like that, but there are these moments. And like I said, a minute ago, is I had a deep belief that in order to grow, in order to have these ahas, I needed to be in a spiritual environment. I needed to be, light and airy and flowy. And the last, during this time, I've really discovered that that is not the truth. And I'm thinking back to some of the situations that have happened since then. And a really big one for me was when I had this kind of like, oh shit. I went to a sound bowl, Reiki, and breath work workshop at the yoga studio. And it was on my 1,000th day sober. I wasn't tracking that, but I saw it on TikTok. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And I was so excited because I'm like, okay, this is going to be, a really beautiful thing. And I'm going to have an aha. And I'm going to walk out of here knowing so much more and, feeling good, all of that. And I'd done breath work in the past, so I was fairly familiar. However, once we got into it, I remember, so I set my mat down. There were people, we were literally packed in there. There was 2 inches between each of these mats. So I already was like, oh man, I don't know about the vibes of this. And so then they were giving instructions, and one of them was, what you're going to do is breathe in really deeply and let the air fall out. And I was like, what the fuck does let the air fall out? Am I supposed to breathe out? Am I supposed to not breathe? So I immediately, started in this kind of space of I'm not vibing how close everyone is, on top of, I don't really know this type of breath work. And so we get started, and, I am all about accepting, others in our spaces. And I'm never like, ugh, I can't believe this person's next to me. That wasn't the energy at all. But when we started, all of a sudden, we have our eye masks on. So it's completely black. And the only really sense that you have is your, hearing. So all of a sudden we get started, and it's just like a breathing machine. And it was at all different cadences. And the person behind me was having a very, from what I could tell, a deep, you know, experience or processing, but it was really overwhelming for me. And the person behind me, the same thing. Honestly, their breathing was kind of sexual, which then my brain hyper fixated on. And so I'm sitting in this space, and I'm hearing all of these, people breathing, and I was so uncomfortable. And I was trying to stick to it. The bitch in my brain was like, you better fucking do this. You better stay. We got to figure some stuff out. And I went back and forth for 15 minutes of I am so uncomfortable right now in this practice. And I'm someone that is very energy aware. And a lot of times with breath work, you are in some ways purging emotions and energy. And so I could just feel this heaviness in that space. And I finally, trusted really my intuition that was screaming at me, that was like, get us out of here. This is not good for us. And so I finally was like, I'm going to listen to that voice that is telling me to get the hell out. And so I get up. Luckily, everyone's got blindfolds on, so you're not really disturbing, and, everyone's breathing. So it's kind of loud in there. So I was able to kind of tiptoe out. And I remember walking out the door, and I was hit by this wave. It almost felt like I was tripping. It was the craziest kind of everything had a glow to it, but I also felt this energetic release. And so I walk out there, and the studio owner was there, and I was like, I'm sorry, I just had to leave. I had to take just a quick breather. And I kind of walk around, and there was another yoga instructor that was like, hey, it's all good. I had to step out too. That wasn't, my thing. And it was in that moment that I realized I had made this kind of spiritual stride around my ego, and this feeling that if I'm not engaging in this spiritual practice, that I am not growing, that I am not learning new things. And the lesson that I learned in that was it felt good to trust my intuition. And my intuition was right. When I left that room, I was, immediately like disarmed. And that was such a powerful moment for me because it really had a chain reaction in other areas of my life where I saw the proof that trusting my intuition and not letting my ego win, like, you know what, buckle up, get your shit together, Like the bitch in my brain, when she taps in, she is a savage. And I've done a lot of work the last, however, many years I've been on this journey. I've done a lot of work, helping to calm that communication and reframe. But, it's not something that like, oh, the moment I figure out, okay, I need to welcome in and understand and love the bitch in my brain. She's not going to go away. And she's not all of a sudden going to be like this Buddhist that only, shares love and, happy opinions. That's just not, that's not the case. We love her, but, like I call her, she's a bitch. And so I really saw this progression I've made and how the work I've done around my ego and the awareness I have around it is now pushing me in a direction that finally feels good, and that I'm not in this like tug of war with my ego and my true self. And so really during a coaching session, then the next time, I told my coach Luz about, this moment I had where I really understood that ultimately that spiritual practice of breath work isn't for me. And that's okay, because there are many other, spiritual woo-woo practices that speak to me, that resonate. And I think a lot of people have this fear or this misunderstanding that, the only time you can connect to yourself is in meditation or, is when you're, at yoga. But the truth is, and what I'm realizing is a lot of my very deep spiritual moments are when I'm driving alone in a car. Like you should see my mind and, that's running and has all these ideas and, reflects on certain situations. It's in those moments in the car that I'm having the biggest breakthroughs. Or it's when I'm, sitting at the park watching Miso eat a fuck ton of grass. Like those are the moments that have really broke me open. And the analogy that me and Luz came up with was the idea of the raspberry scone moment. And really what that is the example of, you're really stoked about getting a raspberry scone. So you go to the bakery, you're waiting in line, and next thing you know, the person in front of you orders the last raspberry scone. It is in those moments of frustration or those moments of like, what the fuck? I came here, the only reason I came here was for a raspberry scone. And of course, the person in front of me took the last one. And it's in those moments that we can reflect and make a shift or bring awareness to how can I use this situation to move myself in the direction or the thought process that I want to go in? How can I look at this through a lens of joy or love? And something as simple as being like, you know what? I was craving the raspberry scone. However, I haven't tried their blueberry scone, and maybe maybe I'll decide or figure out that I fuck with the blueberry scone more than the raspberry scone. And so it's in those moments that you're able to really catch yourself and explore, but in a real world environment. And I think that's so important because, like I said earlier, a lot of us have these ahas in these, very deep spiritual environments, but it's really hard to translate that into other areas of our lives. Like, I went on a yoga retreat and, I had this big aha moment. I was able to get to the root of a lot of things. I, left that trip just on cloud nine. I thought I had all the answers. I was like, life is going to be perfect. I'm worthy of everything. Sure enough, land back in the States, slide right back into routine and work. And next thing you know, it's like, I feel like I've lost all of that, or I'm not able to apply what I learned in those situations to what I'm going through in my everyday life. And so I really think it's, important for all of us to really trust and seek out these spiritual practices that work for us, that we're able to really tap into in real time. And like I said, it doesn't have to be meditation, doesn't have to be, Reiki, it doesn't have to be sound bowls. It's just these small moments where you're able to move from a place of fear essentially into a place of, love and joy. And once you're able to really build that into your life, and the thing is like when I say build, I don't want that to be a scary word or feel like it has to, be that you're building this entire tower. It's just building on those moments where you can make that shift and think about it differently and do it in a way that feels good. And that's really what creating a spiritual practice is all about. We are all different people and we all learn things in different ways. So as obvious as it is to say like, oh, of course we're gonna, have different spiritual practices, because of, the way that society has really crafted the wellness industry, we make a lot of these practices more like to-do lists than we do really immersing ourselves. The part that I think is really important as well is understanding that we are human and we will forever be human. And that comes with imperfections. As much as I try to pursue my highest joyful self, that is not who I am all the time. Like there are some times where I'm sitting in traffic and I'm like, you know, raging. I'm not like an aggressive driver, but it like really irritates me when people don't have like the social awareness. And it's not only driving, it's like in other, spaces. And so it's in those moments that I'm able to recognize, okay, this is a raspberry scone moment. This, motherfucker in the Prius is driving like an asshole. And in that moment, I say, thank you for bringing this to my attention. How can I see this differently? And whether or not I'm able to be like, you know what, maybe they're late for an appointment or late for a meeting, which I have been, plenty of times, I can extend that grace to them as well as really embrace this moment of shifting from, anger or fear into how can I see this in a loving way? How can I see them in a loving way? So really what I want to kind of get across is when it comes to spirituality, and not even spirituality, maybe even just self-development in general, and finding your authentic self and learning these things about yourself, you don't have to, craft a whole practice. Most importantly, you don't have to pay for a practice. I am in full support of the energetic exchange of money, and there is value in spending money on, health and wellness. However, you don't need to, get the high-end meditation cushion or take this course or read this book. Those are all, helpful, but it's really those small moments in your life, the unexpected, the shitty, the or just anticlimactic. Those are the moments that you will experience the most growth, because at least for me, that's where I've been. And a lot of the ahas that I've had have come from these moments that probably would have been meaningless in the past. But instead, I have this awareness of wanting to understand, what is this that I'm learning about myself? What is this lesson that maybe, brought out of me or into my attention? And it also kind of pushes me to, what's the next right action that I want to take that makes me feel good? Because getting pissed for the entire day at the guy in front of you who ordered the raspberry scone, I don't want that. That's not the life I'm trying to live. That's not the mindset. So these moments really challenge me to see things from a different perspective and to dive in to the human experience. That's the thing, is it's life is really so simple and we complicate it. And it's really our idea that things have to look a certain way, and that everything is like a staircase of I have to, step on this staircase before I can get to the next. And we make it this really big, you know, thing that we have to accomplish. And what I want to share is, it's those micro experiences and how fun it can be to really look at your life from that way and be able to move with curiosity in those shitty moments of just how can I better myself through this? And like I said a million times, it's not going to always be the meditation, couch. It's not always going to be yoga. It's going to be standing in that damn bakery wanting a raspberry scone. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. It feels good to be back. It feels good to, be with you guys. I feel a lot more grounded. And so, I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you next week. And have a great rest of your week.